Chapter 1. Kingdom of Meeran. The children were all playing at the school playground until the bell rang. The kids entered the building and gathered around the round tables in the schoolroom. A hologram of a teacher appeared on each of the tables. "I hope you all had fun. Now it's time for your reports," the hologram said. "Peter, please make your presentation." Peter stepped to the front of the class and began reading, "The Loman Civil War." He adjusted his stance and licked his lips. Tomorrow is the 30th anniversary of the truce of the Loman Civil War. Loman was home to 3 different races of people. The Terrans, who adopted the name from the old Earth term, Terra, meaning Earth. The Adlet, an offshoot of humans that at times seem violent, if not misunderstood. And then there are the humans themselves, caught in the middle, who lived among the Terrans. The teacher interrupted. "The Adlet have been at peace for 100 years before this. It may not be fair judging all Adlet." "Yes, Miss Holly," said Peter. "All hologram teachers are named Miss Holly." The Adlet declared independence and claimed the Loman capital as theirs. As a result, the Frontier pulled all human colonists from Loman and returned them to Frontier. The king at the time was killed and the government nearly overthrown. The Kingdom of Meeran sent support to protect the Loman Terrans, and 2 years later was able to push the Adlet out of the capital, which led to the truce. There are no known humans left on Loman or anywhere outside of Frontier. Terra Prime has had peacekeepers there ever since. However, skirmishes continue to happen between the Adlet and local Terrans on Loman and even on Meeran. Although it is known that the Adlet government is behind them, the Adlet government condemns all terrorist activities. When Chancellor Rollin makes a trip, he goes in style. Not the size of a luxury liner, but big enough for the Chancellor to conduct all his business, also known as a mobile palace. The 9 kingdoms of the Great Empire are symbolized on the hull, each king-queen with his/her own sign and the Chancellors in the center. The trip from Terra to Meeran was long, and even with subspace wormholes, took a few days. The unified field drive was overworked and needed a cooldown. Lawless pirates occupied the vast empty space between kingdoms. Even the Chancellor had an escort. A destroyer-class battleship from Frontier. Although Frontier and the Empire have separate militaries, they act in unison and are one and the same. All the kingdoms have a military force of some kind, but only Meeran's rivals that of Frontier's. The Chancellor's ship landed on the Meeran landing pad with barely a rocket blast. With the latest Unified Field Array, UFA, the ship could barely be heard on touchdown. The door opened, and the Chancellor stepped down the stairs to a waiting delegation. His statesman Randall and Security Chief Connor flanked him. The latter was in communication with security around the ship. "Chancellor Rollin," said Ambassador Delian, a young-looking Terran who's also a professional diplomat, "it's so good to see you again." Chancellor Rollin shook his hand, and both embraced. "It's good to be here, Delian." "Ambassador Delian, Chancellor, let me escort you to the palace." He turned to his attendant. "Make sure the Chancellor's bags make it to his room and inform the palace we're on our way." Chancellor Rollin didn't hesitate. "I would like to pray in the chapel before we meet with King Jacob." "Of course, Chancellor, please this way." The ambassador guided the Chancellor and his group to a smaller hall on the way to the main palace. The chapel was only slightly bigger than the entryway. The Chancellor went to the altar and began to pray. Randall bowed his head while Connor maintained vigilance. The audience room was packed with people. Their seats were filled, and no standing room was available. The sides of the room were lined with warriors, and the royal guard surrounded the king. Chancellor Rollin walked in and stood before King Jacob. "Thank you for coming, Chancellor. How was your journey?" said the king, waving for Rollin to approach. "It was pleasant, but long, my lord." "Come, let us talk. Your request was a private audience. I assume you'd like to walk." "Yes, my lord." King Jacob stood, and both men began walking down the hallway with their attendants. "I'll be blunt, Your Highness. It's the Adlet. We fear another civil war on Loman." "I assure you, Chancellor, Meeran has had no official contact with them. We know, but they continue to raid Loman and even Meeran. The terrorists and their supporters remain a threat." King Jacob shook his head. "We've known of their attacks on Loman for years, but we've received no news of an attack on Meeran. They're hidden, not well organized, but many Terrans and Adlet on Meeran are dissatisfied. I thought the peacekeepers had a handle on them. For the most part, but I believe if the kingdom of Meeran can reach out to the Adlet government. The king stopped. You don't mean to negotiate with terrorists? No, my lord, but some of their government officials may listen to us. After all, the attacks from Adlet proper have reduced. Only the rebels keep fighting. King Jacob sighed. I'll send my ambassador to negotiate with their government, but we won't negotiate with terrorists. That's all I ask. Thank you, King Jacob. We'll meet again at the state dinner, the king said, turning away. Please make yourself at home. The chancellor turned to Randall. I'm still amazed at how young he looks. I think he's younger than Delian. Randall smiled. I heard the king ages slowly. We've never been able to prove it. Chancellor Rollin chuckled. Maybe he's an immortal. King Jacob returned to his throne. Bring me the viceroy and send a message to King Terence. He told his guards, who saluted and obeyed. Moments later, the viceroy arrived. Your Highness, said the viceroy, kneeling. Contact the border patrols, send the secret guard, and prepare the Marines. I want this done before the chancellor gets wind of it. Yes, my lord. The viceroy turned to leave. Chancellor Rollin walked into his ship. Randall and Connor were at his side. Prepare a communique for Terra Prime. Let the assembly know of our progress. Yes, Chancellor, said Randall. Connor turned to Rollin. You don't trust him, do you, sir? Chancellor Rollin chuckled. King Jacob was born on Loman. He's human, taken in by Terrans and raised by King Terence's family. He's got secrets. Randall looked confused. How do you know? You know the saying, it takes one to know one? Yes, Chancellor, said Randall. Even kings have secrets, but so do chancellors.